All right, listen up, because what I'm about to tell you could change everything. If you've ever dealt with someone who twists your words, drains your energy, and leaves you second-guessing your own reality, you are not crazy. You're likely dealing with a narcissist. And today, I'm going to give you one sentence, just one, that will make any narcissist stop in their tracks and fear you forever. You ready for it? Because once you hear this, there's no going back. This is the kind of truth that sets you free. When you're dealing with a narcissist, the first and most important thing to understand is that their behavior is not about you. Narcissists operate from a place of deep insecurity, masked by arrogance, manipulation, and a need for control. They often seek out people who are empathetic, kind, and self-reflective, because those traits make you more likely to excuse their bad behavior and doubt your own perception. Over time, they slowly chip away at your confidence and reality. They gaslight you, turn situations around, and make you feel like everything is your fault. This can lead to confusion, shame, and isolation. You start to believe that if you were just a little better, calmer, quieter, more loving, or more patient, then they would finally treat you the way you deserve. But that moment never comes. The truth is, narcissists don't change because they don't see anything wrong with their actions. They will blame, project, and manipulate, but they rarely take true responsibility. They live in a world where they are always the victim or the hero, never the problem. And when you start recognizing their behavior for what it is, you begin to see that it's a pattern, not a coincidence. They don't treat you poorly because you failed them in some way. They do it because that's how they maintain power. Their entire strategy is designed to keep you off balance, emotionally reactive, and constantly chasing their approval. This is why awareness is the first step toward reclaiming your power. Once you understand that you are not the cause of their behavior, you stop trying to fix what was never broken in you. You see that their anger isn't your burden, their criticism isn't truth, and their love, when it shows up, is conditional, strategic, and often weaponized. Recognizing narcissistic behavior means naming the manipulation as it happens, noticing the patterns, and no longer internalizing their chaos. You don't need to argue or explain yourself endlessly. You just need to stop playing the game they've rigged from the start. Because the moment you realize it's not your fault is the moment you begin to take your power back. Narcissists are driven by a relentless need for three things: control, validation, and confusion. Everything they say or do is in service of these needs, whether it's charming you into trust, criticizing you to knock you down, or creating drama to keep you emotionally off balance. Control is the foundation of a narcissist world. They need to feel like they're the one pulling the strings, controlling how you feel, what you think, how you react, and even how you see yourself. When they sense they're losing control, they lash out, shut down, or play the victim to get it back. I think it's not always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it's subtle, like ignoring your boundaries, shifting blame, or constantly redirecting conversations to make themselves the center of attention. Validation is their drug. They crave admiration, attention, and praise, not just to feel good, but to survive emotionally. When you give them validation, you're feeding their ego. When you withhold it, when you set boundaries, say no, or call them out, they react like they've been personally attacked. They can't handle criticism or rejection because it threatens the image they work so hard to project. That's why narcissists often surround themselves with people who reinforce their narrative and silence anyone who challenges it. They'll either charm you to keep you close or punish you emotionally when you step out of line. Confusion is their most dangerous tool. Narcissists intentionally blur lines between truth and lies, love and control, care and manipulation. They want you to question your memory, your emotions, and your decisions. If you're confused, you're easier to control. They might say one thing and do another. They'll twist your words, deny things they clearly said, or act like your reactions are irrational or overblown. This keeps you stuck in a constant cycle of self-doubt and over-explaining, where you're always trying to defend your reality and prove your intentions. It's exhausting and exactly what they want. The longer you're confused, the less likely you are to leave, challenge them, or stand up for yourself. Understanding that narcissists thrive on control, validation, and confusion allows you to step out of their manipulation loop. You begin to see that their behavior is calculated, not accidental. You stop taking the bait. You stop feeding their ego. And you start seeing the patterns as tactics, not reflections of your worth or your failure to love them enough. The moment you recognize what they need is the moment you can decide not to give it to them. The most powerful thing you can do when dealing with a narcissist is to stop feeding their need for emotional control. They want reactions, tears, anger, confusion, desperate explanations, because those responses tell them they still have power over you. When you argue, beg, or defend yourself endlessly, you're playing right into their hands. It gives them fuel, confirms their dominance, and keeps you entangled in their toxic cycle. That's why emotional detachment is not just a strategy, it's a survival skill. But this kind of detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop engaging in a way that gives them access to your emotions, your peace, and your mind. Calm, firm detachment looks like keeping your tone neutral, your words minimal, and your boundaries solid. Narcissists want to hook you emotionally. So when you stop reacting with intensity, they start to lose interest. They'll try harder at first. They may provoke you even more, escalate the drama, or suddenly play the victim to get a rise out of you. But the more consistently you remain detached, the more they recognize that you're no longer a source of supply. This is where your power begins to return. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying your feelings. You stop trying to prove your worth or defend your decisions. You simply observe their behavior for what it is. Manipulation, not truth. Firm detachment also means holding your boundaries without guilt. Narcissists are masters at pushing limits. They will test you over and over to see if you'll cave. They'll guilt trip you, accuse you of being cold or selfish, or pretend not to understand what you're asking for. But when you remain steady, when you say no and mean it, when you remove yourself from the chaos, when you stick to your word, they begin to feel the shift. You're no longer their puppet. You're no longer emotionally available for their mind games. This kind of strength is quiet but powerful. You're not attacking them. You're not exposing them. You're simply no longer playing the game. Detachment also protects your energy. Narcissists are emotional vampires. They drain you with their constant needs, shifting moods, and psychological warfare. If you stay entangled, you eventually feel depleted, anxious, and unsure of who you are. But when you step back, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically, you start to heal. You get your clarity back. You reconnect with your instincts. You begin to rebuild your identity outside of their influence. That's when their power really starts to fade, because narcissists can't stand losing control, and nothing threatens them more than someone who's no longer afraid, no longer reactive, and no longer under their spell. The truth is, you don't need to outsmart or expose a narcissist to win. You just need to stop engaging with them on their terms. Calm, firm detachment is not a weakness. It's one of the strongest, most self-respecting responses you can have. It says, I know who I am. I don't need your validation, and I'm no longer available for the chaos you create. That message is more powerful than any argument you could ever make. It's a shift in energy that they feel instantly. And when you maintain it consistently, it becomes your armor, one that narcissists cannot penetrate. There is one sentence that can completely shift the power dynamic with a narcissist, and it's this: I'm not available for this conversation. It's simple, calm, and powerful. And most importantly, it does something narcissists hate. It creates a boundary they can't argue with. Narcissists feed off engagement. They want to pull you into circular conversations, provoke emotional reactions, and keep you defending yourself so they can stay in control. But this one sentence cuts the cord. It doesn't attack them, it doesn't explain anything, and it doesn't offer fuel. It simply ends the interaction on your terms. This sentence works because it disrupts their strategy. A narcissist thrives on pulling you into a psychological maze where they constantly shift the goalposts. They may start with a small criticism, escalate to a full-blown argument, then flip into playing the victim, all in the same conversation. It's designed to keep you emotionally hooked, constantly reacting. But when you say, I'm not available for this conversation, you're refusing to play the game. You're signaling that their tactics no longer work on you, that you're in control of your energy, your time, and your emotional space. The beauty of this phrase is that it can be used in a variety of situations. Whether they're trying to start an argument, guilt trip you, gaslight you, or bait you into explaining yourself for the 100th time, you can use it as a clean, firm exit. And it doesn't leave much room for debate. If they push back, you can calmly repeat it or simply walk away. There's no need to defend it. That's the point. Narcissists want you to explain yourself because it keeps the door open for them to manipulate your words and twist the narrative. When you stop explaining, you stop giving them that power. It's important to note that at first, a narcissist may not respond well to this boundary. They may escalate. mock your calmness, or accuse you of being avoidant or disrespectful. That's because they sense they're losing control, and that's terrifying to them. But your job isn't to manage their reactions, it's to protect your peace. The more consistently you use this sentence, the clearer your boundary becomes, and over time, they learn that the old tactics don't work on you anymore. They may try new angles, but the more detached and grounded you remain, the more their control unravels. This sentence doesn't just protect you, it empowers you. It reminds you that you don't have to show up to every fight you're invited to. You don't have to justify your feelings or explain your truth to someone who has no intention of hearing it. You can simply decide that you're unavailable for toxicity, manipulation, and emotional games. That's not weakness, that's self-respect. And for a narcissist, that kind of quiet, confident refusal is one of the most unsettling things they can experience, because it means you've stopped trying to win them over. You've stopped needing their approval. And that is what truly makes them fear you. The moment you say, I'm not available for this conversation, you're not just using words, you're making a declaration of self-worth. That single sentence draws a clear boundary, one that says, I am not going to be dragged into chaos, manipulated, or controlled. It's not just about ending a conversation. It's about taking back your autonomy. Narcissists are experts at eroding boundaries. They poke, push, and test until you're unsure whether you're overreacting or just trying to protect yourself. But this sentence stops all of that. It's a verbal wall they can't climb without revealing their own desperation. What makes this sentence so powerful is that it delivers the one thing a narcissist can't handle, the loss of emotional leverage. They want you defensive, explaining yourself, proving your intentions. When you simply say you're unavailable, you leave them with nothing to grab onto. No argument, no weakness, no emotion. You're showing them that your peace is more important than their approval. That alone is a massive blow to their ego, because they've built their entire dynamic with you on the assumption that they have the ability to destabilize you. This sentence also exposes the truth about who holds the power. Narcissists operate under the illusion that they are in control, that they set the emotional tone, that you need them to validate your experience. But when you step out of that narrative and say, I'm not available for this, you flip the script. You become the one defining the rules. You set the emotional boundaries. You decide when and if a conversation happens, and on what terms. That kind of control doesn't require yelling, insults, or ultimatums. It just requires quiet confidence and follow through. The sentence also functions as a mirror. It forces the narcissist to sit with themselves, with no one left to project onto, no emotional target to unload on. That silence is uncomfortable for them. They may try to provoke a reaction by accusing you of being passive-aggressive, cold, or emotionally unavailable. But again, that's just bait. Your job isn't to take it. Your job is to stay rooted in your own self-respect. Because every time you uphold this boundary, you reinforce the idea that your energy is no longer up for grabs. Consistency is key. If you use this sentence once and then revert to old patterns the next time they push, they'll sense it's just a tactic, not a real shift. But when you use it repeatedly, calmly, and with no emotional charge, it becomes a new standard. You're no longer someone they can manipulate. You're no longer a source of emotional supply. You're a person who knows your worth and protects it, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're being guilt-tripped or shamed. This is where their power starts to dissolve, not through confrontation or exposure, but through your consistent refusal to be available for dysfunction. You become unpredictable to them, not in a chaotic way, but in a powerful way. They don't know how to get to you anymore, and that is exactly what makes them fear you. Because nothing terrifies a narcissist more than someone they can't control. Consistency is the ultimate game changer when it comes to dealing with a narcissist. It's not a dramatic confrontation, a single powerful sentence, or even a moment of clarity that truly dismantles their control. It's your quiet, repeated refusal to engage on their terms. Narcissists operate in cycles. They provoke, manipulate, charm, guilt, and then repeat. They're constantly testing you, trying to see if they can get a reaction, if you'll bend your boundaries, if you're still emotionally available for their games. When you break this cycle, not just once, but over and over again, you send a message that speaks louder than any outburst or explanation ever could. Emotional consistency, staying calm, neutral, and firm, confuses them. They're used to creating chaos and watching others unravel. But when you stop reacting and start responding with clarity and self-respect every time, they start to lose their grip. They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't feed their need for drama or validation. That's when they begin to realize that you're no longer under their influence. Narcissists fear this because they thrive on power, and power over someone who's reactive is easy. But power over someone who is steady, grounded, and unavailable for emotional manipulation? That's nearly impossible to maintain. This doesn't mean you never feel frustrated, hurt, or angry. You will. But the key is what you do with those emotions. Do you lash out and get pulled back into their cycle? Or do you acknowledge how you feel and still choose to respond with intention? Consistency isn't about perfection. It's about commitment. It's about showing up for yourself again and again, even when it's hard. When you say no, you mean it. When you set a boundary, you hold it. When you walk away, you don't turn back just because they suddenly act nice or say all the right things. You already know it's a pattern, not a breakthrough. The more consistent you are, the more predictable you become. Not to the narcissist, but to yourself. You start to trust your own decisions. You stop second guessing what you saw, felt, or experienced. That inner trust is a massive threat to a narcissist because it means you're no longer dependent on them to define reality. You don't need their approval, their apology, or their version of the story. You have your own, and you stand by it. Over time, your consistency becomes your protection. It keeps you from slipping back into old roles: caretaker, fixer, pleaser, peacekeeper. It stops the narcissist from pulling you into yet another fake reconciliation or manufactured crisis. They may still try, but you'll see it for what it is. You won't be shocked, and you won't be swayed. You'll simply stay the course. What truly breaks a narcissist's control isn't a single moment. It's your ongoing decision to put yourself first, to act from a place of clarity instead of reactivity, and to be unwavering in your commitment to peace. That's what makes you untouchable. That's what makes them fear you, not because you're fighting them, but because you've stopped playing altogether.